The purpose of this training is to provide a safety overview for new employees. Accident statistics show that new employees are much more likely to sustain on-the-job injuries than more experienced workers. Therefore, it is essential that new employees receive detailed safety information in order to provide them with the knowledge and skills needed to perform their jobs safely and prevent accidents. Before we get into our safety training, we want to give you a quick look at the safety statistics in the U.S. The number of preventable work deaths increased 5% in 2022, totaling 4,695. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, private industry employers reported 2.6 million non-fatal injuries and illnesses in 2023. The total cost of work injuries in 2022 was $167.0 billion. The cost per worker in 2022 was $1,040. Cost per medically consulted injury in 2022 was $40,000, while the cost per death was $1,390,000. Our safety guiding principles incorporates the following beliefs. 1. Providing employees with a safe and healthy work environment is the responsibility of our leadership team. 2. All injuries and incidents can be prevented. 3. Employees have the right to stop unsafe work. 4. Everyone must contribute to lowering the risk of accidents and injuries. 5. Working safely is a condition of employment. 6. Employees should only engage in tasks that they are trained and competent to perform. One of the most important things an employee needs to understand when they go to a new work site is the emergency action plan. There are two types of emergencies. One that requires evacuation, such as a fire or chemical spill. In the case of an evacuation, one of the most critical things to understand is the evacuation route and the designated assembly area. If you hear the fire alarm, you must immediately evacuate the building. The evacuation routes should be posted throughout the facility. Never push or shove others as you exit. Walk quickly, in an orderly fashion. The other type of emergency requires employees to shelter in place. The shelter-in-place emergencies are for events such as tornadoes or active shooter situations. All employees have the right and the responsibility to stand up for safety and stop the job when serious hazards or at-risk behaviors are present. You, as an employee, have the right to refuse to do any job for which you feel could cause immediate death or serious physical harm to you or to a coworker or could cause severe damage to the environment. Most of the time, the potential for injuries can be minimized or eliminated by using the proper personal protective equipment. Please discuss with your manager any situation you feel uncomfortable with before engaging in that activity. Fit for duty. Employees are expected to report to work rested, alert, and prepared to devote their full attention to the job. Alcohol and drug use is prohibited. Any violation can result in serious health and/or safety issues. Employees must report the use of any prescription drug that may affect their mental or physical functions to their immediate manager before beginning work. Personal protective equipment, PPE. When engineering, work practice, and administrative controls are not feasible or do not provide sufficient protection, the company must provide personal protective equipment, PPE, to employees and ensure its use. Personal protective equipment is equipment worn to minimize exposure to a variety of hazards. Our PPE program is designed to ensure that employees receive the correct PPE that they need, in the right size or style, that they understand its care, use, and disposal, and that it is readily available to employees at no cost. When PPE is provided, we expect it to be worn 100% of the time. Cut-resistant gloves are required when working around blade assemblies and knives. Goggles, rubber gloves, and aprons are worn while using chemicals. Whenever noise levels are over 85 decibels, hearing protection is required. Hard hats must be worn when there is the potential for falling objects. Accident reporting. If you are injured, it is your responsibility to immediately report your injury to your manager and/or the site safety manager. Your manager and/or the safety manager will conduct a complete and thorough investigation. This includes a root cause investigation to find out why the injury happened and how we can prevent it from happening again. Employees who fail to report injuries may be subject to adverse employment consequences. The company expects to take responsibility for injuries that happen in the workplace. If an employee is injured with a muscle strain and fails to immediately report it, then that employee may not get the proper medical attention they need, and the employee may lose the presumption that the injury is work-related. Reasonable accommodation. When an employee is injured or is unable to perform their assigned job duties for medical reasons, the company will attempt to reasonably accommodate the employee's restrictions to support the reintegration and rehabilitation of the employee back into the workplace. This may include graduated or modified work assignments that address the employee's physical or psychological limitations. Employees are expected to provide written medical evidence in a timely manner and to cooperate in the development or implementation of reasonable accommodation that would accommodate their safe return to work. Slips, trips, and falls are a major cause of workplace accidents and injuries. Some of the most common causes are uneven surfaces, inadequate lighting, inappropriate footwear, and failure to stay focused on the task. All work areas should be neat and clean, trash should be removed immediately, power cords and hoses should never be stretched across areas where people walk. Additionally, items such as plastic banding materials must be removed from the floor immediately. Falls account for 10% of all workplace deaths and 20% of all disabling on-the-job injuries. As a result, employees must always be aware of walking and working surfaces. Never use chairs, boxes, or makeshift platforms to reach high places. Inspect the ladder before use. Never stand on the top 2 steps of a stepladder. Don't jump off ladders or platforms. Always wear a harness and lanyard if you're working at heights of 4 feet or more. Additionally, if you are working on a platform and you see openings in the floor which your foot could fall into, you must report it to your manager immediately. Falls can happen quickly. Good reaction time equals 0.2 seconds. The fall distance in 0.2 seconds is 6.5 feet. In 1 second your body will fall 32 feet. Lifting and carrying takes place in every department every day. 35% of all occupational injuries are due to improper lifting. Proper lifting requires you to follow these steps. Stand facing the object. Keep the object close to your body. The closer it is to your spine, the less force it exerts on your back. Get a firm grip on the object. Never twist while lifting. Place the feet wider than the object in the 10 and 2 position. Bend with the knees, never bend at the waist. Keep your back straight. Product stacking. Loads that are stacked too high represent a clear and present danger to all of those near that load. A misstacked load could fall over at any moment. The proper thing to do is to lower the height of the load. Some facilities that you may work in have forklift traffic. Forklifts are extremely dangerous as they are very heavy and steer with the rear wheels instead of the front wheels. Never walk behind a forklift without making eye contact with the forklift operator and getting permission to proceed. Never operate a piece of equipment unless you are fully trained and authorized to do so. You must be certified before operating any motorized equipment. If a forklift operator in your area is driving erratically or in an unsafe manner, it is your responsibility to immediately report it to the site safety manager. What are the 5 key elements in the OSHA Hazardous Communication Standard? 1. Employers must have a written hazard communication program. 2. Containers must be labeled, and labels must follow a consistent format. 3. Safety data sheets must be available for hazardous substances in the workplace. 4. Workers must be trained. 5. Employers must have an updated chemical inventory. What is a safety data sheet? The information contained in the Safety Data Sheets (SDS) is required to be presented in a consistent user-friendly, 16-section format. A safety data sheet contains detailed information about hazardous chemicals' health effects, its physical and chemical characteristics, and the safe practices for using it. Whenever handling a chemical, make sure you review the safety data sheet prior to doing the job. Companies are required to have a current safety data sheet for every hazardous product covered by the hazardous communication standard that you use or may be exposed to as part of your work. Labels. All chemical containers must be labeled. A label should never be removed from a chemical container. There are two main GHS signal words you'll find on chemical labels, which include warning and danger. In a nutshell, anything with the word warning on it is important, but chemicals featuring the word danger mean the chemical is much more severe in terms of potential threats to physical safety. Familiarize yourself with the locations of the nearest first aid kits and AEDs in your work area. If first aid supplies are low, insufficient, or outdated, contact your manager. Familiarize yourself with the locations of any eyewash stations or emergency showers in your work area. If the eyewash stations are dirty or not functioning, contact your manager. Lockout tagout is a process designed to ensure that all energy sources are isolated and de-energized prior to working on a piece of equipment. Only authorized and specially trained employees are allowed to lock out or tag out a piece of equipment. Every lock that is put on a piece of equipment will identify the employee who put the lock on that piece of equipment. A lock can only be removed by the person who applied it. If you see a lock on any piece of equipment in your work area, make sure never to start or energize that piece of equipment until you are given the okay by the person who placed the lock on the equipment. Machine guarding. Most machinery and tools require some sort of guarding to prevent serious injury. The principle of guarding machinery is very simple. When pinch points or hazard points cannot be eliminated, guarding must be installed. In many cases, all that is needed is to place a barrier in front of the hazard point. Never reach your hand into an opening to attempt to unjam the machine, or allow anyone else to do so. Never operate a piece of equipment if a guard is missing. Do not remove guards unless the machine is locked out and tagged out. Report machine guarding problems to your manager immediately. Electrical panels. All energized or potentially energized electrical work will be performed by a qualified person. Only authorized and qualified individuals may open and service an electrical panel. Never open an electrical panel to reset a piece of equipment. Get an authorized maintenance person to reset the equipment. If an unauthorized person opens an electrical panel, they can seriously jeopardize their health and safety. Dealing with blood. When it comes to dealing with blood, employees must assume that the person who is bleeding has HIV/AIDS and/or hepatitis and should not touch another person's wound. Only properly trained first aid responders with proper protective equipment should deal with cuts or blood in the workplace. It is always best to get your immediate manager involved in any of these situations. Workplace violence. Any acts or threatened acts of violence will not be tolerated. Anyone proven to have engaged in violent behavior will subject themselves to employment consequences and may be subject to other civil and criminal penalties. Employees must report any threats or actual acts of violence to their manager immediately. Cyberbullying or cyber threats are also prohibited. Final safety thoughts. Safety must always take precedence over everything else to ensure every employee goes home in the same condition they came to work. Remember, when it comes to safety, you have the authority to make the right call.